everyone, and welcome to Seed Speaks. This
Thank you,
is
Mark.
a video series brought to you by Seedworld Group. My name is Mark Zinkowitz, and I am an editor with Seedworld Group. And this month, we're talking about the marketing power of seed and plants. I'm joined today by two experts to talk about something I've wanted to shed some light on for a while now, and that's mustard. I eat mustard all the time. You probably do too. It's one of those food items that we take for granted, along with ketchup and relish and all the other condiments. It's kind of omnipresent in our lives, but we don't usually think much about where mustard comes from or how it gets from the field to your plate. I have with me Rick Mitzel, Executive Director for Sask Mustard, whose mission is to grow the Saskatchewan mustard industry for the benefit of producers. Sask Mustard funds research, communications, and market development programs that are intended to improve yields, decrease input costs, increase demand, and create an overall better product. Welcome, Rick. How are you today?
I'm doing good, Mark. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for joining me. And also joining us today is Jeremy Kessler. He's the owner of Ontario's Coslicks Canadian Mustard. Now, this company was established in 1948 and produces handmade mustard in small batches. Coslicks is proud to be part of Canada's mustard making tradition, crafting its mustards with 100% Canadian mustard seed and sourcing its ingredients from local suppliers. Welcome, Jeremy. How are you?
Thank you, Mark. All good, thank you.
I understand you're at a food show in Toronto today, Jeremy.
Yeah, I'm at the CL show, which is a lot of fun. A lot of different suppliers, everything from equipment, packaging equipment, to manufacturers trying to
Yeah,
convince me I need exotic ingredients.
yeah, it sounds like a pretty lively event. So it's
Yeah, big
fitting that
show.
you're there today to join us. And you both sort of live and breathe mustard. And Canada is a great country to be in if mustard is something you're interested in. Canada's the world's largest exporter of mustard. Half of all mustard consumed around the world is made with mustard seed grown in Saskatchewan specifically, which is pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yep.
Rick, I'm going to start with you, Rick. What made you want to devote yourself to mustard as a crop full time?
Well, I was born and raised in West Central Saskatchewan, and at that time, there mustard was a strong crop in that area. My father was a select seed grower in the area, so I got an interest in the seed business, and then interest in mustard from the fact it was being grown around the area. And then as my career developed, I took the opportunity to move over to the mustard organization and try and help them develop their business here in Saskatchewan.
Now, Jeremy, how did you get involved in manufacturing mustard as a condiment? How did that all begin for you?
Well, the story is I was on my way to a meeting downtown Toronto. I had a little bit of time to kill, so I went to get a coffee and a bagel down at the St. Lawrence Market. And I popped in to say hello to Anton Kozlik, who was an older gentleman. He'd been sick and was closing down his mustard business. Uh, he said, take what you need, because by the end of the week, I'll be gone. So the light went off, and I suggested he teach me the tricks of making mustard. And apparently, he was a good teacher, and I resurrected the business. And 23 years later, here we are. Now, my son does most of the heavy lifting, and I'm still involved in the business. But that's the quick story.
Hmm, that's fascinating. Now, I'd like to begin by tracing for people how mustard begins in a field and gets to their refrigerator. Now, Rick, your job is to help develop the Saskatchewan mustard industry by financing the development of new varieties with better agronomics and helping find new markets for mustard grown in Saskatchewan. Rick, can you briefly trace that journey for us using a specific variety of condiment mustard? How does it get from the field to people's refrigerator or onto their hot dog?
Well, the the big part of it is the grain merchants are pretty key in that whole operation. So they've got relationships with the growers. So the grain merchants buy the mustard from the growers directly, and then they take it and they clean it. They don't process it. They clean it. They make sure that it's at the level of what the processors are looking for quality, and then they turn it over to the processors and have them take it from there to make the mustard that goes on the shelf.
Now, Jeremy, you are the beneficiary of that process, of the work that people like Rick do to bring new mustard varieties to the market. Coslix buys
Right.
mustard seed, which you then turn into a product that people eat. Now, Coslix makes 36 kinds of condiment mustard, from
Yep.
like the standard yellow stuff that we all know
No, no,
to
no, no,
mustard.
no, 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 no. Bite your tongue, Mark. We don't make we don't make anything standard, especially that yellow stuff, which they call it mustard, but all it really is a vehicle for vinegar and salt. It's very unmustardy, actually, even though a lot of people identify with it. Real mustard, what I call real mustard, must have some heat. You should feel it in your sinuses.
Yeah.
You sh- and you shouldn't be able to eat a lot of it because it's spicy. The yellow stuff you get in a squeeze bottle is not at all spicy. Most mustards should be spicy.
That's a good point. So you make a specialty mustard that's not, the standard, like I say, the standard yellow stuff. Like you make
That's
something that
correct.
has, you make varieties with garlic, with fruit, even maple mustard. You do make like a
Correct.
Dijon as well. Can you describe in a nutshell how a mustard seed gets from your facility to someone's plate? What is the basic process of making that specialty mustard that you
The,
guys create?
the basic process is dead simple. You take the seed, you grind it into a powder, you add water to it, then you add vinegar and flavorings, the various herbs, or in the case you mentioned, maple syrup, and you stick it in a bottle. That's essentially how easy it is.
Hmm. So it's really, technically, I guess, not that difficult to make mustard. The difficulty comes in is making a special mustard, something you say like you say that's unique, that's going to be memorable for people, that isn't just that standard yellow stuff, but is something, a lot more special that they're going to remember when they eat it. And I'm
Yep.
curious what's popular right now in terms of mustard. Rick, when you think of condiment mustard varieties, what's sort of new and hot right now in terms of what growers specifically are looking for?
Well, in the past few years, we've developed a hybrid mustard for brown, and we're in the process of launching a hybrid now for Oriental as well. And then we've got a composite in the yellow mustards. So those three varieties are extremely hot right now. I get calls all the time for them for the seed, and the reason is because it's a hybrid, so it comes out of the ground quicker, ground cover quicker. You get more plant matter, and you end up with more yield at the end of the day. Having said that, all of what I'm talking about is all non-GMO as well. We don't do any work with GMO. We don't have any intention to do work with GMOs. So all of this is non-GMO, even though they're hybrids.
And Jeremy, in terms of specialty mustard, the flavors that you guys create that you offer people, what's really big right now in terms of what consumers want when you think about those food trends? Or are there one or two big things that people are looking for right now in terms of condiment mustard?
It's difficult to say. We've got 5 or 6 bestsellers. One of which is the amazing maple mustard, our horseradish mustard, and one that we call triple crunch. They are all very, very different from each other. The maple, the maple and the horseradish are spicy. The horseradish more so. The triple crunch, though, which has just seeds, uh, probably our most popular for food service. Restaurants and chefs love it. Is very, very mild, but it's got an amazing texture. We refer to it as our caviar, um, an affordable caviar. Although this last year it wasn't that affordable. Um, yeah, this last year we got kind of hammered. But it's hard to sort of say that there's a trend. Uh, Other than that, once people try a good mustard, they're amazed. The number of people we get that say, oh, they don't like mustard. And then they try our mustard, and suddenly they like mustard. As I say, we don't make any of those yellow squeeze bottle type things. We just make a good, honest mustard. Some of them are quite exotic. You know, we make a balsamic fig and date that I personally love. My other favorite is the horseradish mustard. If with the Japanese people we know that come via the store, they all go for the maple. You know, they can't believe how good it is. They like spice, they like maple, and so the heat and the sweetness talk to them. We make an Italian mustard. Maybe the only people in the world that make an Italian mustard, because mustard's not part of the Italian cuisine, even though it was the Romans that introduced mustard into France. You know, the Roman legionnaires introduced mustard into France. But in the 12th century, the clergy in Italy said that mustard was the spice from hell for obvious reasons, and the Italian population stopped eating mustard. Uh, so it's hard to say which the trends are. The popular ones have been popular for quite a long time, but we do get a lot of people that are adventurous. You know, one of the mustards we make, we call it a Bordeaux because as opposed to a Dijon, which uses white wine vinegar, we make it with red wine vinegar. And I don't know of anyone else who uses red wine vinegar, which is really strange because it's a delicious mustard. But as far as trends, that's hard to discern.
I didn't know that the Pope could influence mustard consumption. That's really fascinating, actually, and that's something we're actually going to get to is mustard and the French connection. It's been in the news recently for political reasons, oddly enough. In 2022, we had a mustard seed shortage here in Canada, which drove up prices and caused a shortage of mustard seed abroad because Canada wasn't able to export as much to places like France, which, as you just mentioned, takes its mustard very seriously. So fewer acres were seeded in 2021 in Canada due to the dry weather. So this shortage caused a big controversy in France, right? Because mustard is a big staple of the diet there. French newspapers expressed some frustration that Canada couldn't supply as much mustard seed as France needed. So there's sort of you might call it a movement in France now to import less mustard from Canada and grow more of it there so that France isn't as dependent on Canada's mustard seed. So this is causing some trade tensions. Rick, can you give us some insight into why weather and climate changes are impacting the mustard industry and what can be done about that?
Well, it's interesting. The crop that we had in 2021 and 2022 were significantly impacted by the drought, of course, and then that drove the prices up. And that affected every crop. It wasn't just mustard, for sure. In fact, mustard is probably one of the most tolerant crops to a drought because it has such an extensive root system, probably twice that of canola. So when we look at it, there was a shortage there, and what some of the growers have done over the years is we've ran into droughts before, so they've adopted minimum tillage and variable rate seeding and fertility practices to kind of help them through these tough spots in these droughts. So that's kind of what they've done, and any other technology that comes along, farmers are pretty good at picking up on new technology to help them produce more grain. So I'm confident that any issues they would have, they would definitely pick up any new innovations that come along.
And Jeremy, how were you impacted by the mustard shortage at Coslicks, and what do you hope can maybe be done about that in the future?
Well, we were hammered by what happened last year. because not only did we have bad weather, but the Ukrainians and the Russians, who both grow mustard, suddenly that was taken out of the equation. So we were getting, there were demands on the Canadian mustard from people that used to buy from the Ukraine that suddenly couldn't get any. Prices went through the roof. At once, we were paying less than $1.50 a kilogram, and prices peaked at over $9 a kilogram. At which stage we actually weren't making any money at all, and we survived, but only just. It's been very, very difficult. Um, yeah, it's been a difficult year. Hopefully, uh, these hybrids that Rick is talking about sound very, very interesting, because anything that can bring the price down will be fantastic for us. Because right now, our sales have been very good. You know, the numbers, the volume has been great. Unfortunately, the margins have all disappeared. And as you mentioned earlier, it's other crops as well. You know, a friend of mine who's in the hummus business has experienced exactly the same problems. You know, the cost of his ingredients has just skyrocketed. So his volume has been great, but he's also not making it. So it's been a very trying year.
Yeah, I would think so. You sort of have those ripple effects. And I have a question from the audience. Ashley Robinson is asking, are there any other uses for mustard other than a condiment? Can it be used as a birdseed or for pest and disease control in fields? Rick, I've interviewed you before for some other articles in regards to mustard, and I know that there are some other uses for mustard seed, and a new one that I actually wrote about recently is biofumigation, which is fascinating. Can you explain briefly, Rick, what biofumigation is and how certain mustard varieties are beginning to be used for this?
Sure. Yeah, there's certain industries that rely on biofumigation to control disease and insects in the soil. And in the last few years, some of the soil fumigants have been deregistered. So they're looking for more traditional ways of controlling disease and insects in the field. So they've turned to mustard, because it was mustard was a crop that was used for that many years ago, and it looks like it's coming full circle back to that. We do. I work with mustard growers in all parts of Canada, and we work with them on seed. And what they do is they grow the crop up to a point where it's flowering, and it's got the most amount of glucosinolates in it as possible, and that's what they want. And then they work the crop into the ground, and then those glucosinolates work on controlling the disease and the insects in the soil, and it's very beneficial for the following year for the potato crop.
Now, Jeremy, Coslix makes more than just condiment mustard. You make other products. You make seafood sauce, horseradish, hot sauce, barbecue sauce, spice rubs, all of which contain
Yeah.
mustard. Aside from condiment mustard, right now, what is the biggest demand for the use of mustard as a food product?
Well, as a food product, it's probably just prepared mustard, but it's also used in things like hot dogs, not as a topping on the hot dog, but in the actual sausage. Many of them have up to 30% mustard. One of the reasons is it's compared to meat, it's cheaper. It's also a natural antibacterial. And on the label, they can write 100% beef and spices. So Rick, though, could probably talk more authoritatively on the other uses of mustard. What I will quickly mention, though, is the bug guy who comes around to our factory, you know, as part of the FCC doctrine, we have to be, one of the pest control guys has to come round. And he often remarks on how few bugs we have in the factory. And one of the things we put it down to is there's a lot of mustard dust that just permeates the air. And we think this is controlling the bugs. But again, Rick would probably know more about that than I do.
That's fascinating. Is that a thing? Could that be a thing, Rick? Like if you have a mustard facility and there's like mustard dust in the air that it could keep pests down? Like is that possible?
Is anything's possible? I don't know for sure to answer that question, but yeah, it does control insects in the soil, so it may have an effect on it in the air as well.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is neat. Before I let you guys go, Ashley Robinson actually has one more question about Saskatchewan. Why is Saskatchewan one of the best regions for growing mustard? Are there any other regions that work for growing mustard? Rick, why is Saskatchewan such a great place for growing this crop?
It basically is the environment in which the crop is grown. At the end of the day, the processors, they like a steady, like a nice size, a big size of mustard seed, and they like a consistent size of mustard seed. And with the environment that we grow it in Saskatchewan, which is mainly the southwest corner of Saskatchewan, which is drier than, certainly a lot drier than other parts of the province, you do tend to get that better quality seed. And so it's a bit of a unique area to grow it in, and it does make for a successful crop just because of the environment there.
Jeremy, I'll give you the last word before we sign off for the day. Are there any other parts of Canada that you source mustard seed from where they grow good mustard? Other than Saskatchewan, are there any other places in the country that
There,
you sort of look to?
there is a little bit out of Alberta
Yeah.
and a little bit out of Manitoba, but the vast majority comes from Saskatchewan.
Yeah, it seems like Saskatchewan is definitely the heart
Well,
of Canada's mustard industry. And like I say,
well,
half of all mustard eaten worldwide is grown from mustard seed from
well,
Saskatchewan. That's incredible.
I've been told that in a good year, when the crop is bountiful, up to 90% of the world's mustard comes from Canada. And we should mention, I don't know if people know this, but the biggest and oldest mustard mill, it's been around for more than 150 years, is the one in Hamilton, Ontario, which is very strange and very unexpected for most people.
Hmm.
So our tradition with mustard is very deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as I was researching this episode, there were so many things about mustard in Canada that I learned that I didn't know, and so it's definitely something that is nice to be able to educate myself and other people on. So thank you so much, guys, for joining me today. This was great, and unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. I'd love to keep talking about this, but perhaps I can do another episode soon. So thank you so much, Rick and Jeremy, for your time. Have a great day. And thank you to our audience for joining us. You can check out the Sask Mustard website at saskmustard.com, saskmustard.com. And you can check out all of Kozlik's products at its website, kozliks.com, kozliks.com. Thanks again, Jeremy and Rick. And you can join us next week when Alex Martin will unveil the role that chefs can play in guiding the plant breeding process. This is Mark Zinkowitz signing off. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Mark.